Neon Green Network begrüßt die Filmemacherin, Taucherin und Abenteurerin Céline Cousteau.
Good evening, everyone. So, I first want to acknowledge the fact that you showed up. Thank you for being here. We have a choice from the moment we wake up in the morning till we go to sleep, and you made the choice that this is the place you want to be. So I'd like to give you a round of applause for that. Thank you. This is quite a long program, so I'm going to ask each of you to take 2 very deep breaths of oxygen to wake your body up. Do not be embarrassed to make noise like in yoga class. That first breath is thanks to the plants on the earth, and the second breath is generated by the oceans. So 2 very, very big thank yous to those 2 ecosystems. And as I was sitting and listening to all the speakers before, the thought occurred to me that there's a lot of parallels in my life and in yours, Adam and Angie. As I was listening to how many people have been touched by Frida and the work that she's done and the inspiration, I realized the parallels that we have between people is, and as I continue to believe and talk about, continuously apparent to me through the stories of other people. And as generations have been inspired by my grandfather, Jacques Cousteau, I am seeing here the generations inspired by Frida. And I keep seeing this repetitive thing amongst us that brings us closer. So I think it's beautiful that you are continuing, in essence, the legacy of Frida, and that all of you here are somehow touched by her, because I truly believe that's the power we each have as individuals. So thank you for showing me that and showing me a piece of your history and allowing me to somehow connect to that. And the beauty in that is that emotion and vulnerability will always come through when it's speaking truth. So when you are standing here on stage, know that they are all with you with that same feeling. So I want to take you back before I take you forward. I think it's important to acknowledge my own history with my family and how they have inspired me. This is my extended family, although I only have one brother. This whole crew somehow was part of my family. Some of them would show up at Christmas, at random dinners at my home. I would board Calypso. I was always the little sister. Everybody looked out for me. What you see in this photograph is somebody that you know. Perhaps you can find him there. It's black and white, but he's wearing the red cap. I was wondering if I should wear it here just as a good joke. Next to him is my father, Jean-Michel, to your left, the bearded man. But what most people don't know much about is my grandmother and my mother, who are also in the photograph. And perhaps if you're sitting far away, you won't find them, but they are there. So this, to me, symbolizes an iceberg, in that what the public saw was the tip of the iceberg. That was my grandfather. He was the public figure. He was the idea generator. He was the charm. He was the story. He was the leader. But his power existed because he created a team behind him that allowed him to do the work that he needed to do, allowed him to go forward with the visions that he had. And the brilliance in that is that he surrounded himself with people that enabled him to do all of this because he knew what he couldn't do, and he brought in the experts who could. And that allowed him to create this body of work that we all know around the world. And I never tire of people coming up to me. Just last night, someone did the same. I grew up with your grandfather. Again, that brings us all closer to a common history. So it's important when you see perhaps any one of us standing here on stage, we might just be the tip of an iceberg of an entire system that has to coexist in order for it to function. And that's the same whether we're talking about human systems or environmental systems. Now, because of this family I grew up in, I often get called a marine biologist or an oceanographer. I am nothing of a scientist, although I spend a lot of time with scientists. I feel I'm much more of a translator for the work that they do so that I can actually bring it to a general audience and make it relevant. But I end up on projects that bring me to absolutely fascinating places around the world, and that is an extreme privilege to have been born with, is that I have access. That door has been opened for me by my predecessors. What I do with it then becomes my choice. It then becomes my responsibility. It's just like education. If you are receiving an education, you then have knowledge, and knowledge is power. What you do with that is your responsibility. So I get called in on a lot of ocean projects, most notably on documentary films. So sometimes when people put my job title as diver, I think, it's not really a profession, but I do dive a lot for work. And I do end up in all of these wonderful places. For example, the photograph with the tiger shark, she was about 4 or 5 meters long. Tiger sharks are very hard to pick up out of the water. So we would tie her to the back of the boat. The reason being is we were working with scientists who were studying sharks. And so we would have to catch them, tag them, and release them so we could get data and information about what their ecosystem was, about what their territory was. So that if we want to protect the animal, we can't just protect the individual animal. We have to understand where its home is, much like us. Now, Adam had asked in an email, he said, don't just talk about the stories, talk about the challenges. And I think that's very important for us to do that. Because working for the environment, working for humanity is a challenge. It's an uphill battle. And your conviction will be tested time and time again. So I decided to pull this video up, which is the time that I was asked to go diving in Antarctica. Now, I'm kind of a petite woman. I'm not a seal with a lot of insulation to keep me warm from the cold. And the water in Antarctica, where we were, went to -2 degrees Celsius. And this is where they wanted me to dive. Now, I'm a warm water person. Antarctica was not on my to-do list. But we were filming a 12-part documentary television series for Chilean TV, and because I'm one of the co-hosts, I do have to get in the water. Because I'm on camera, I have to know what I'm doing. But again, think of the iceberg. The reason I was able to do this is because I had a very skilled team. We did train together. They were watching out for me. I had to learn new equipment, and I had to be able to trust that in these circumstances, if anything happened, I could count on them. My team members in the field are my lifeline. Literally, life and death is in their hands. So we have to be a really cohesive team in order to be successful at what we do. But we had the incredible privilege of being able to dive in essentially what is a whale cemetery, back in the days where whaling ships would illegally catch whale for the oil. And this in and of itself, again, is a piece of our past and our history, but is a proof that we can change. And even though there is still illegal whale hunting there is already an improvement. And we can go further. An old whaling ship that sunk after a very big party that they threw led to a fire on the boat and it sunk, is now an artificial reef. So perhaps somewhere there is a little bit of retribution and there is a little bit of beauty in the challenges and in the difficulties and in the negative. Now, something else that was a huge challenge for me here, as I said, the cold, was equipment failure. This is me saying, I'm going up, okay? Reason being is that pretty much every dive, my equipment would freeze open, and I would have a free flow of air coming out, which means my tank is emptying, which means my dive is over, and I would come to the surface. But this is one of the challenges that one just faces and says, what do I do about this? Do I give up? Do I try harder? Or do I just accept it? Well, I accepted and embraced it. I never liked diving in cold water. I never will like diving in cold water. But when you have the privilege of being able to dive around an iceberg and realize how small we are, and as John said, just we're a speck in billions of years of history, that is a privilege to feel, to look at this iceberg underwater and go, God, I am so small. And thank you for that. Because perspective is amazing. I called my talk From Ocean to Amazon. I start with ocean because I'd like to meet expectation that a Cousteau lives underwater. I do part-time. But I was also introduced to the Amazon when I was barely 9 years old. I went down there with my grandfather on a 2-week trip. Calypso was 18 months in the Amazon. My grandmother left the port in the United States aboard Calypso. She doesn't come home until Calypso comes home. All the other crew members fly in and out with 3-month times in the field. I flew down with my grandfather and was able to spend a couple of weeks with the crew and had some extraordinary experiences that for a 9-year-old were really about the visuals. We got dropped off on a sandbar covered in these little frogs. And I just remember my feet in the sand and walking and all the frogs jumping everywhere. A crew member took me on a canoe ride to catch piranha because the scientist needed to study them and he would put them in the aquarium and look at their behavior. So I had to catch piranha when I was 9. A man on the side of the river holding bananas. We jumped in the Zodiac and ran over. We bought bananas from him, and his wife offered us some food from her fire. I didn't know what I was eating until perhaps another decade later, until I had manioc again, yuca. All of those memories stay with you, and for me, this is all about education. What we give our children is so important, those moments of education. Any experience we can give them to be outdoors, to be barefoot, to touch the soil, to understand their place in the environment will stay with them, I can guarantee. I won't tell you how many years ago that was, but I'm still going back to the Amazon, and it is a place that I am completely attached to, but very clear that I don't belong in. But my visceral attachment will mean I am also a fierce defender because I understand it, because I have experienced it, and it is forever here. And most of that is because of the people that I've met. I had the opportunity of going, not just when I was 9, but returning 25 years later to see what had happened in the Amazon since my grandfather first went in the early 1980s. What had happened to the different places he had been, to the people he had met. And one place in particular really struck a chord and has stayed close to my heart since then. And that's the Javari indigenous territory in the Brazilian Amazon. I learned that their rates of hepatitis were out of proportion. 80% hepatitis A, 27% hepatitis B, 16% hepatitis C, 6% hepatitis delta, and you wonder why. Outsiders came in and the disease spread, and the system doesn't fix it. Malaria, same thing. Malaria wasn't endemic, it came with the outsiders. And so their health was compromised. A couple of years later, they contacted me and said, "We want you to tell the world we are alive. We want you to tell the world we exist." And I said, yes. I'm going to show you a trailer that is the project I've been working on since then, since pre-2012. And we are now in post-production and editing.
I first came to the Amazon as a child in the early 80s and accompanied my grandfather as he explored and filmed the region. The vast rainforest here remains the largest on Earth, but exponentially increasing human enterprise, deforestation, and sprawl leaves the Amazon's future uncertain. In 2007, I returned on another expedition to attend a meeting of the indigenous tribes of an area called the Vale do Javari, deep in the middle of the Amazon. The experience went far beyond what I expected. Past generations have thrived here, but outside threats are unrelenting and they fear the worst.
Passando uma situação bem crítica na nossa região.
Illegal industries strip away their resources and stress the ecosystem.
Esse crescimento do interesse das terras indígenas.
With soaring rates of hepatitis, not native to them, they are desperate for health care. Now, with the hope of gaining attention and support, the tribes of the Vale do Javari have asked me to tell their story. Their culture, their knowledge of the rainforest, everything is on the line.
It's becoming evident to me that the story is really the deep human story. They don't want to die.
So I don't know if anyone here has ever felt on the brink of death, on the brink of survival. And when Clovis Marubo of the Marubo tribe said to me, Céline, I do not want my people to go extinct, it puts everything in perspective. I wouldn't want my people going extinct. And so what do we do? What's the respect and what's the dignity? Do we fight, or do we put our arms down? Do we face inevitable end? No, of course not. They don't. Why should we? And this can be said for anything that we're facing, whether it's a personal challenge, whether it's an environmental challenge, whether it's a humanitarian challenge. We don't put our arms down. When we're tired, we take a rest, we take 2 deep breaths, and then we start again. Because we believe in what we do, because we believe that we can make change happen. Now, they asked me, I'm one person. I don't think I can save 4,000 people, plus almost 2,000 uncontacted people living in this area, but I'm not going to stop trying. Because I do think I can make that one difference that will bring the rest of the iceberg in to actually make it happen. And my conviction, just like everybody's here, will be tested over and over again. Can you do this? Can you do this? Do you really believe in it? And if every time you step up to the plate, no matter how tired you are, and you say yes, you will have moments of respite when you can take a step back. Now, I'm not one to quote people because I forget quotes all the time. But when I was in high school, this was 17 years old, in my high school journal I wrote, and this is a quote by a French rapper named MC Solar. I don't listen to rap. What an odd quote to have. But essentially he says, and I'll just say it in English, I take a step back to take momentum to move forward. And that's what runners do. It's what we should all do, is take inventory and then move forward. Gather your team, move forward. And you have the potential in this room to do that. And I think this is why it's such powerful to have these talks, not just those of us standing on stage, but all of you here who can then network and gather that group together, bring your community and your tribe together to strengthen the collaboration so that you will make things happen. It's what leaders do. Know what you don't know how to do and bring the people in who do. These are the people that I fight for, because when I look at them, I see one human, and that one human life is worth fighting for. I see generations of families, and those families are worth fighting for. I see ritual. We have our dances, so do they. We have our religion, our spirituality, so do they. At the center of this dance is a shaman. He happens to be an 18-year-old young man. Now, in our culture, we would look for our elders, our wise people, those who have PhDs and a whole lot of letters behind their name. But what if our wise ones were the young ones? What if amongst us there is a person here who has the drive, the intelligence, the motivation, the charisma, and the ability to be the center that will make a movement happen? We owe it to those young people to foster that, mentor it, and take them forward. See the value in that. Look around and see where that power is, and then enable it to happen. That's the power of community. And I think the more we look at the possibility that perhaps we are one global human tribe, we all sleep under the same roof. Looks a little different, but it's the same sky. And we all have a common future and destiny. If we don't think that way, we will all go in one direction or the other, even if we're completely in different places. Because the reality is that we all know we are connected by our waterways, our water, our air. It all comes full circle back to us. Now, if you look at this picture, you perhaps make an assumption of who this child is. Just so you know, he happens to be mine. This is my little human. But what I think we need to start doing is we need to start looking at this human with the same lens as any other human. Or we need to see other humans with the same lens as we see this one. That perhaps what we need to do is retrain not just our way of thinking and our way of behaving, but our unconscious perception. That perhaps what has happened is that over the course of time, we add lenses to our eyes, and we actually do see things differently. When a child is born, he doesn't arrive with fear or prejudice or anger? Those things are learned and taught. What if we were to foster everything else? What if we were one day have the capability of seeing this child and this child with the exact same lens? Would we have a better sense of the worth of one human life and the equality of what that means at its purest and simplest sense? And that, for me, is what I look to do. I have a good friend who said to me, you know, Céline, your life's work isn't about telling stories. That's great, you make films. Oh, now you're collaborating on a collection of jewelry. Oh, you're a spokesperson for this cause. Oh, you're talking for this foundation. He goes, your life's work is about changing human consciousness. I went, okay, big step back. That needs a lot of momentum. But I cannot be discouraged because I believe that I can make change happen. I believe that we are all interconnected. I believe we have to be inspired and that we have to foster this idea of a common future. And I really believe that we are completely interconnected by stories. Each one of us is a storyteller. Any one of you could be standing here, if you weren't too nervous, and tell your story to the audience, and you would find things in common that would then create your network and would strengthen your web and would strengthen your cause and your community. And that's really what I'm seeking to do, is bringing these stories back and making them somehow relevant back to who we are as individuals. Waterways, I mentioned earlier in terms of connecting. This is the slum area of Iquitos in Peru, in the Peruvian Amazon. And I show this photograph because to me it really is symbolic of this cyclical system we have and everything we can talk about. When the water rises, it's right up underneath the houses. And because it's the slum area, they don't have anywhere to put their waste, their trash, or their human waste. So when the water rises, everything goes out the window into the river. And the river goes down and out into the ocean. Well, I'm sure all of you get some of your resources from the ocean. So when we think we're not connected, we are. I was asked yesterday in an interview, well, what would you say to a landlocked country like Austria? I'm like, you are not landlocked. You have a river that brings you to the ocean. You have mountains that bring rain and snow down to your rivers. You are part of that cycle. You are completely connected. Do you eat from your oceans? Do you use any products that have something from your oceans? Well, then you are connected. Landlocked is here. It's not a real thing. And then there's this. I mean, this doesn't matter what country it's in. It's everywhere. It's just some countries actually pay people to pick it up. But all of this is us. It's partially education. It's partially caring. That goes back into our oceans and our waterways. So now I've come back from oceans to Amazon and back to oceans. And I want to show you a trailer of the next project we're actually launching. I've been working with my father for the past 3 years, my brother as well, on a film called Odyssey 3D. It's in honor of my grandfather, 60 years of the silent world. We will be showing this film at the Cannes Film Festival on May 13th. And for us as well, it marks a moment in history and a passage of time, and I think paying homage is appropriate. So I'll just show you the quick trailer. I never tire of actually looking at these images, so hopefully you will get to see the film one day. This image for me, just in closing, really symbolizes our relationship with our environment. There's a reflection of us in our environment. There's always our environment within us, and how we choose to see it really changes what we do about it. When we look closely, we are a complete, intricate part of it. The challenge that I would like to pose all of you tonight is to take this inspiration, whatever you take from this evening, and go and influence other people that are not already in your circle. It's harder to do than to talk to like-minded people, but it is so necessary if change is going to happen. And then you will really see where the power is, when you are convinced that you can do something. And when you face those challenges, take one big step back, take 2 deep breaths, and then charge ahead. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this. People have been very active on Twitter while you were speaking. There are not lots of questions coming in, though. Just one from Maximilian Eberl, who wrote, "Yesterday was World Tuna Day." I didn't know that. And he would be interested to hear from you about this.
I actually don't know about World Tuna Day. I know about World Ocean Day on June 8th. I think we create days so that we remember that actually there are tuna in danger, there is an ocean in danger, there's an earth in danger. I kind of live this every day, so for me it becomes more natural. I got asked recently, what are you doing on World Ocean Day? I'm like, the same thing I do every day, I'm defending the ocean. Yeah, great that the tuna has a day. Why not?
You have something in common with Adam. You're kind of living family history every day. How is that?
It's something that has been very deliberately chosen. My background is in psychology. I studied intercultural relations in my master's. I worked in a psychiatric hospital. I worked as an artist assistant because I had a background in art as well.
And this is your 5th life, or?
Yeah, I'm used to working 3 jobs at once, actually. It's kind of how it keeps going. But yeah, I came back to it as an adult knowing that this, for me, was the way forward, was to take my educational studies and bring it into what my family has done for generations and talk about the human at the center of the environmental story.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you so much for this. It was very, very, very inspiring. Thank you.